Hello, Jacob here, and today go ahead and preview the Week 6 Minnesota Vikings matchup against the Carolina Panthers. So without further ado, let's get into it. So yeah, as I just said, Minnesota will be traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers for this Week 6 matchup. And the Carolina Panthers started off the year hot. I think they went off to like a 3-0 start or like a 2-1 start, and then have fallen off to 3-2 after a loss against the Eagles last week. And, well, let's just say right now, Carolina Panthers have kind of cooled off into a team that a lot of people thought they would be. But at this point, I mean, you still can't take them lightly because they are still a pretty good team, even though they are down Christian McCaffrey for this particular week, as they have been since week 3 when he went down due to a hamstring injury against the Texans. And I should know because I drafted him for fantasy, but again, not really much you can do about that. Unfortunately, injuries are a part of the game and stuff like that. And for Carolina, Christian McCaffrey usually starts off the offense for the Panthers. I mean, very much like Dalvin Cook when it comes to stuff like that, where they're one of the few teams where the running back sort of is like the lightning rod, do-it-all player that really gets their offense moving and gets their team going. And they have a very young defense as well. And like I say, when we played them last year, it took a Chad Beebe miracle finish to beat them. But that was an interesting game from start to finish last year because the Vikings really weren't doing a whole lot. Neither were the Panthers for the most part. And then the second half hit, and bam, bam, they hit us with like 2 quick defensive scores that stunned the Vikings. And then they managed to come back out and win it at the end. I mean, that was one of the crazier games of last year, where the Vikings had no business winning that game. But like I say, it's a different cast of characters this year. Sam Darnold is their starting quarterback in Carolina, where after having a really good start has cooled off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, again, they do have some weapons out there. Like, I mean, they have some decent receivers. You know, their backup running backs aren't horrible. Their defense is still young. You know, so it'll be interesting to see here, just because, again, the Vikings have... It's a frustration thing with this team for me, with the Vikings, just because it seems like we're trying to go way too conservative instead of trying to actually win games, you know? Basically playing not to lose instead of playing to win, which anyone who's done any sort of sports or sport-related activity can tell you, well, that's not really the mentality you want to have. You want to have that winning mentality all throughout, stomp on their throat, killer mentality when you have them down, just because, well, case in point, last week against the Lions, we really didn't do much, and we held the lead for most of the game, but then the Lions managed to come back and make it a game at the end, which, if it wasn't for a Greg Joseph 54-yard miracle field goal and their defense playing 20 yards behind everybody, well, we'd be looking at 1-4 instead of 2-3 right now. And again, that's a different video for a different day. But yeah, so honestly, how does our offense look against their defense? Because there's a lot of big names on our offense that were injured and dinged up, including both Thielen and Jefferson. Sounds like Dalvin Cook might be back. So KJ Osborne, Amir Abdullah, you mean like guys you wouldn't necessarily expect maybe would probably have to step up on the offense and all that stuff for us. But can we just, at the very least, open it up a little bit here? You know, like when it's like 2nd and 20, instead of going with like a handoff up the middle to Madison, why don't we try an end around? Why don't we try, you know, throwing the ball 5-10 yards down the field and seeing what happens, you know? Why don't we try a few things, you know? It's just like playing too conservative has cost us so many games in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what we can do there. You know, hopefully we can actually do something there. But yeah, and then again, our defense, at least our defensive line, has looked really, really good. I mean, I think we're currently second in the league with defensive sacks at 17, only behind, ironically enough, the Chicago Bears with 18 sacks. So at least our defensive line is getting the pressure on the boys, which does kind of help our secondary in a way, but I think our secondary is finally starting to gel together. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, not really much to preview per se for this week, because pretty much at this point, the rest of the season for me is just going to be kind of a wait and see and go from there, basically, because, well, this team never does what you expect it to do or what you want it to do. They just kind of, I don't know, it's frustrating, basically, because, again, there's so much talent on this team. I just wonder if it's time to cut ties with the coaching staff, and, stay tuned for that, too, because I probably will be making an updated video on that during the bye week and all that stuff, since the Vikings are off next weekend. And also stay tuned, because I do have another video in the works here. So basically, until we meet again, this is Jacob, and have a good day.